Coming up right now, we're joined by Shane Ryan, author and, of course, a part of Golf Digest. Great to see you, buddy. We're coming off the first signature event of the year. Your thoughts on Chris Kirk's 6th victory on the PGA Tour?
Yeah, I was there for his first victory. In fact, it was the first tournament I covered in 2013 at Sea Island when I was writing my book. And he beat Bryony Baird, who was one of the classic, great PGA Tour players who never got a win. I think for a long time, he was the leading money leader who had never won on the tour. But yeah, Chris Kirk, what a great story. One of the first people I interviewed as a golf journalist, really nice guy. And obviously what he's come through, it's pretty cool to see what he did there. And, like Eamon was saying before the break, he looked amazing. This is a course where you can't stop making birdies, and he just never did.
On that subject of making birdies or not stopping making birdies on this course, Shane, are you okay with the ease with which Kapalua plays every year? We're coming out of the winter. It's a bit of a birdie fest. The guys all seem happy. Or would you like to see a little bit more rigor applied to these guys first off?
Yeah, I don't think it's that big a deal for me. I think, once in a while during the course of the year, I want to see really difficult conditions. I want to see it at the U.S. Open. I want to see players mad. And, in the Open Championship, I always want the wind to blow. But, for a tournament like this where you're in a beautiful setting, I think it's pretty cool to start the year seeing guys able to just tear up a course, seeing excellence writ large, basically like inviting Steph Curry to just shoot free throws over and over, but more exciting than that. That actually makes it sound really boring. No, I think it's cool. I think 29 under doesn't bother me one bit at a tournament like this. There's a time and place for that. And I think Hawaii in January is that time and is that place.
Let's get to the first kind of mini controversy of the year. Scottie Scheffler is voted PGA Tour Player of the Year last week. Had a fantastic season. Jon Rahm won a major and won twice as many tournaments as Scottie Scheffler. Didn't get it. The difference maker, to my mind, is the voting period was December 1st through December 14th. Jon Rahm left in the middle of that voting period to go to LIV after weeks of noise preceding that he was going to make the jump. Is this a fair reflection of how you think the vote would have gone if Jon Rahm was still on the PGA Tour, or were the players saying, you know what, there's the door, we're not giving you a goodbye gift?
Well, let me give you two answers. The first answer I'll give you is that a data nerd, a stats nerd, which is that, look, Scottie Scheffler by far led every player in strokes gained. He was the best ball striker all year. He was statistically the best player. Okay, so in that sense, I think you can easily justify giving the award to Scottie Scheffler kind of in a vacuum, right, with no context.
Yeah, but they don't give awards for spreadsheets out here, Shane. They give awards for trophies.
Well, maybe they should. No, you're absolutely right. Like, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to deduce that, hey, maybe something that happened later in the year might have influenced this, because you're right. Wins are the ultimate thing we talk about. Now, Scheffler, to his credit, won the Players' Championship, but to your point, Jon Rahm won, I think, 3 PGA Tour events, and critically, he won a major. He won the Masters. So, if the shoe were on the other foot, and Scottie Scheffler was the one who left for LIV Golf, do I think they would have found their way to giving the award to Jon Rahm? Why, yes, I do. It's going to shock you to think that I believe that. But no, I mean, look, you can justify giving the award to Scottie Scheffler, but let's not pretend that the LIV Golf move didn't at least influence the decision there.
Wait a second, justify or unjustified, 4 is greater than 2, and some say the Masters is the greatest of all time. Who would you have voted for? I would have voted for Jon Rahm, period, full stop.
Yeah, I think I would have voted for Rahm as well. I guess what I'm saying is that if you were giving an MVP award in baseball, you wouldn't say, well, this player didn't win the World Series, so we can't give him the MVP award. You could argue that wins, there's an element of luck there. And again, I'm talking as a complete numbers nerd here. I understand that probably people are throwing rotten vegetables at their TV screen now. I'm just saying the best player in terms of who is making the best shots the most consistently was Scottie Scheffler. I would have voted for Rahm, I think, because I do agree with you guys that the win is the paramount thing in golf. I remember asking Adam Scott once, do you think it's, unlucky that you only have one major? It's not a fair reflection. And he gave an honest answer saying, no, you got to go out and win the majors. And historically, I think the majors are a really good reflection of who the best players were. So yes, you do have to win. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate there with the numbers angle.
We haven't spoken to you since Jon Rahm decided to go to LIV. We're in that kind of awkward part of the season. He won 4 times, including the Masters, so there'll be some title defense / non-title defenses because he's not a part of the tour anymore. What did you just think of his decision for the most part?
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising. The quotes everybody trotted out from a year earlier where he said, I've already got enough money. That's not what matters in life and all that stuff. And then he goes, I would say, putting aside the morality of his decision or the ethics of it or whatever, which fortunately or not has become almost a passe discussion at this point in golf. I think the impact it has more broadly, the biggest thing is that it was a real shot across the bow from LIV Golf, essentially telling the PGA Tour, hey, if you had a thought of, after we dropped the lawsuits, if you had a thought of slinking back and taking your VC money and forgetting about us, well, here's what you're going to deal with. You're going to deal with us trying to poach your best players and succeeding. When you look at the history of guys that LIV Golf signed, I think the first one that was really sort of, stopped you in your tracks was Cam Smith. That was the one that was hard to explain away, saying, okay, this is obviously a really good player in his prime. This was that times 10, right? I mean, Jon Rahm, whether he moves the needle or not truly in a global stage, whether anyone does beyond Tiger Woods, the point is he's a really good player, a really fascinating player to watch, always been one of my favorite players to talk to. So to him to go to LIV Golf was a really just massive, massive moment that is going to affect, I think, future negotiations.
All of the broader noise around this issue, Shane, came out last week in some public comments that Mackenzie Hughes made. He's very much in the journeyman category in the PGA Tour, but he is a member of the PAC committee among the players. And he basically suggested that there's a growing divide between the best players and the rest of the players in terms of some guys are driving the bus and other guys aren't being consulted on the direction that bus is going. Do you buy the argument that this divide is growing, it's getting more divisive, and is that unavoidable?
Yeah, I do buy the argument. I think, this is what happens when you don't have a union, right? You're not going to, at this point in golf, if you command a lot of money or they think you command a lot of money, you're going to get a lot of money. And if you're a journeyman, you are going to have to go along for the ride. So I also hear the argument that, hey, these guys are making a lot of money and this high tide is probably going to raise all ships. The Mackenzie Hughes of the world may not make less money than they did before. But to your point, is it inevitable? Yes, 100% inevitable. It was inevitable the moment the PIF got involved in golf and started throwing these massive numbers around. The PGA Tour had to do whatever they could to, first of all, try to avoid, this ruining their sport. And a big part of that is catering to your best players so they don't go. And someone's going to get lost in that mix, and it's going to be the journeyman. I think I've heard them derisively referred to as mules on social media. Those guys are not going to have a say, but it's also important to note that they may also not make less money. So there's a few things to balance there.
Shane, it's January 8th. The deadline for December 31st obviously moved forward as talking about this framework agreement. Is the PGA Tour in a position of strength? Is it a precarious position? Where do you see things right now just in terms of the tour without a deal in place at this point?
Well, keeping in mind that I'm not, inside the negotiations room or anything like that, I don't have too much inside information. What it looks like to me, and I think most people would agree, is that, they're looking at this, the Fenway Group, things like that. The VC money might be a good way to sort of mitigate the Saudi influence in this. But at the same time, the VC money is not going to want to invest in the PGA Tour if the reality of what they're investing is guess what? You've got a rival with bottomless pockets who's going to continue poaching your best players. So I would think the Fenway Sports Group wants the PIF involved at this point because they've shown how committed they are. The PIF, how they feel about the VC money is a little bit more negligible. We don't know. I still think the PGA Tour is in a precarious position in the sense that it behooves them to do a deal. And there's also some precarity involved in the question of how much influence they're going to have after this deal is done. And I would think that they're trying to seize that and get some control and have a say moving forward. But it certainly gets complicated when you think about, who's actually going to be bankrolling most of this.
There's a growing sentiment, both in conversations that I have with people, and you certainly see it on social media, Shane, that fans are getting turned off by all of the conversation, the politics, the money, the backbiting. And I'm curious if you think that's actually something that's true, that they care less, that they're watching less. Is there a knock-on effect that the players seem particularly ignorant of? Because that was one of the things Mackenzie Hughes pointed out, is that the trickle-down effect to the fans who are being turned off by what the players are actually doing and saying.
Yeah, I think it's a big potential problem. And when I say that, you look at the TV ratings last year, they weren't down. They were, if anything, static. They may have gone up a little bit. And so this year could be a big test of that. But I do think if you look at, and I wrote about this in Golf Digest, if you look at sports like, IndyCar, which we kind of laugh at now, that open wheel race car racing, in the 70s, that was the biggest deal in America. It was bigger than NASCAR. It was almost bigger than F1. Then they had a similar split, right? They split apart into two different organizations, and people tuned out because you didn't have the best people competing against each other. They didn't like that. Boxing, of course, you don't have to tell you. It used to be, with baseball, the biggest thing going in America. Now they have 8 million different classifications. You can't get the two best players to fight. MMA has, if not exceeded them, as close to, and boxing is on the wane in popularity. Golf is a niche sport like this, where it's enjoyed some, great viewership, and it has a solid base of people watching, but you don't want to take it for granted. This is not football. This is not baseball, right? This is something that is precarious. And so if you annoy enough fans and you have a schism for too long, I think that's a huge, huge issue where, the people who are paying the TV contract now, they might look at it and say, geez, I think we may be paying like too much for golf at this point. Like, I don't think it justifies renewing in 2030 or whenever it comes up next. So you got to be careful of that. And I think we should be watching the TV ratings really closely this year to see if there is that fan fatigue. Like, I don't care about this stuff anymore.
Shane, speaking of splits, Tiger Woods and Nike parting ways after some 27 years together, as Tiger announced on social media today. What's the top line for you in this story? Is it the strength and length of this partnership, or this new beginning potentially for Tiger?
The top line for me is, look, I appear on the Golf Channel roughly once per month, and there's space here, Nike. If you guys are looking for someone after Tiger, I certainly can be bought. No, I think the top line, Damon, yeah, just a long, long partnership. We saw a similar thing, I think, with Nike and Roger Federer, where it gets to the point where it's probably not sustainable anymore, or they, both parties decide the value isn't there. But it's so, I remember being a kid when Tiger Woods came out and buying those Tiger Nike hats. There was something magical about it, which it maybe feels a little lame to say now because it is a brand, right? But at the time, you associated Tiger so completely with that Nike brand, with that hat, that it's crazy to think that he'll not be wearing the swoosh on his head anymore. It's hard to imagine, but maybe we talk about inevitable things. Maybe this is another one.
Well, wherever he goes, Shane, I'm sure you're going to have an opportunity to add some more apparel to the collection. It's always good to catch up with you. Look forward to it next time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.